Hello friends. Welcome back again on the I Have a Vision Academy YouTube channel. In short, I Have Academy. So without any further ado, let's start today's topic. We will be studying today deficits. So in the previous class, I have told you all the information about the budget as well as passage of budget in the parliament. Now I have told you there are two sides, the expenditure side, which will appropriation bill, and second is the revenue side, which will finance bill. So now when the expenditure is greater than the revenue collected by the government, we will have a deficit. Now there are various kinds of deficits. We will be going through all these deficits one by one, and let's start with the biggest deficit, the overall deficit, the total deficit. So very simple formula we have: all the expenditure minus all the receipts. So total expenditure, doesn't matter it is revenue or capital, minus total receipts. आप इसको receipts भी बोल सकते हो, receipts भी बोल सकते हो, ठीक है, रिसिप्टे भी बोल सकते हो, कुछ भी बोल सकते हो. So some of the students may think that we can also do receipts minus the expenditure, है ना. यही इससे माइनस क्यों हो रहा है? What happen if we reverse this difference? See, we are talking about deficit. It means the money which is going out of purse is greater than the money which is coming into the purse. So that's why expenditure part is greater than revenue, receipts part. So we will have a positive number here, but it is representing the deficit. अंडरस्टूड. अगर हम इसे उल्टा भी कर देंगे तो बस ये माइनस में आ जाएगा और वो हमें और भी क्लियरली इंडिकेट कर लेगा. दिस माइनस साइन विल क्लियरली इंडिकेट दैट दिस इज द डेफिसिट पार्ट. बट फॉर द सेक ऑफ इजीनेस एंड फॉलोइंग द ग्रेट इकोनॉमिस्ट जितने भी हैं वो ऐसा ही फॉर्मूला देते हैं, तो इससे याद करिए. नाउ सेकेंड, द रेवेन्यू deficit. Now in the previous class, at the end few minutes of the class, I have told you about revenue deficit. It is the revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. Understood? Also I have told you that revenue, whatever transactions which fall into revenue, they are neither creating any assets nor they are creating any liabilities. It means the revenue part of the budget which is not altering the asset or liability variable, वो सब revenue में आएगा, मैंने आपको बताया था. So now if we have a deficit in the revenue part, it means if we have a revenue deficit, it means the government will be taking loans, doesn't matter in home, in India or abroad, or it is using up, the government of India is using up its savings to fulfill this deficit. Now as the government of India is using its own savings, which otherwise he will be using it to create capital assets. Now these savings the government of India is infusing into deficit financing. किसमें? Revenue deficit में. So it will hinder the progress of development of our nation. Understood? So this is another bad aspect or negative aspect of revenue deficit. समझ में आ गया आपको? एक और देखते हैं, the famous one. Fiscal deficit. The formula of fiscal deficit is total expenditure We are not touching the expenditure part. But in the revenue part, we are excluding something. What we are excluding? Total revenue or receipts, sorry receipts ही लिख लीजिए, रेवेन्यू तो दूसरी टर्म आ जाएगी ना, मीनिंग तो सेम है बट हम रेवेन्यू तो अब यहाँ यूज़ कर रहे हैं. टोटल रिसीट्स एक्सेप्ट borrowings. So now we are excluding the borrowings from the receipts part. Why we are excluding the borrowings? Let's see a mathematical calculation. इतना आप एक बार एब्जॉर्व कर लीजिए, हट जाता हूँ मैं. मैंने कल क्या बताया था रेवेन्यू के बारे में, रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट के बारे में, वही मैंने आज बताया है, पर फिर भी मैंने कल क्या बताया था? द लोन्स विच आर टेकन बाय द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया टू फुलफिल दिस रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट. ये कैसा जो हम फुलफिल कर रहे हैं रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट, ये किस प्रकार का ट्रांजैक्शन है? नॉन डेवलपमेंटल. कैसे? क्योंकि इन द रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट मैंने अभी बताया रेवेन्यू are those transactions which doesn't alter the two variables asset and liability part. It means this revenue deficit, the money which we are putting or fulfilling in revenue deficit, वो एक तरह से वेस्ट है. कैसे वेस्ट है? बिकॉज वहाँ से कोई कैपिटल असेट क्रिएट नहीं हो रहा एंड वी आर यूजिंग दिस लोन टू फुलफिल आवर डेली रिक्वायरमेंट्स. इमेजिन इन अ सिंगल हाउस होल्ड, इन योर हाउस होल्ड the earning of your house is rupees 100 and the expenditure part of your household is 150. So eventually your economy will get plummeted on the ground. Now we are talking about fiscal deficit. One more point, in revenue deficit it is not like that. It is the government of India can allay this revenue deficit. Why? Because this revenue deficit comprised of some of the obligations of government of India, like salaries of its employees, pension of its employees. So we can't optimize this revenue deficit by adjusting the salaries or making prudence transactions of the money which has been inculcated in the revenue deficit. Understood? Now fiscal deficit. I had told you total expenditure minus total receipts except borrowing. What is the total expenditure? Revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure. Total receipts, revenue receipts plus capital receipts except borrowing. Why I have included this borrowing part with capital receipts and not with revenue receipts? Again and again I am telling you this, that revenue part is not altering the two variables. So all the borrowings will create the liability on government of India. As the liability has been created on the government of India, automatically that transaction will fall into capital receipt part, because the money is incoming, receipt part, and there is creation of the liability. So capital part, it means capital receipts. कल भी मैंने आपको समझाया था with various examples. Now let's further solve this. Revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. What does it form? Revenue deficit. Now in the future preliminary exam, on the future pre-exams, there will be one statement that revenue deficit is part of the fiscal deficit. एंड नीचे आपको दे देंगे 1 2 2 एंड 3 3 ओनली. सो ध्यान से देखिए, कंसंट्रेट कीजिए. रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट इज पार्ट ऑफ द फिजिकल डेफिसिट. अंडरस्टूड. प्लस कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर एंड माइनस कैपिटल receipts except borrowing, and this is nothing but the total borrowings of government of India. Understood? So a number, मान लीजिए 1 2 3 4 is the fiscal deficit of India. So this amount will be taken as loans either from home मतलब inside India, abroad, or from RBI. Understood? So the fiscal deficit is equal to the total borrowings of government of India, and this total borrowings of government of India doesn't matter. The government of India has raised this loan from internally or externally or from RBI. Understood? The second statement is revenue deficit is part of the fiscal deficit. So ये सारे questions आपके प्री में आ सकते हैं, है ना. सबसे आसान क्या होगा? What is the equation or formula of fiscal deficit? Now proceeding to the next deficit, that is effective revenue deficit. उससे पहले प्राइमरी डेफिसिट देख लेते हैं. It is equal to fiscal deficit minus the interest liabilities. See, if we have taken loans in the fiscal deficit, we have taken, sorry, not in the fiscal deficit, in the practical terms, we have taken some loans. Understand? Borrowings. So on those borrowings, we have to pay back some interest, R% का. Now this is our obligation. हमको ये तो देना ही देना पड़ेगा. अंडरस्टूड? इसका मतलब कितनी मनी आ रही है इतनी तो मनी जानी ही जानी है हमारी R%. सो टू गेट एक्चुअल व्यू और फर्दर crystal clear view of our economy, we also calculate primary deficit, and that is equal to fiscal deficit minus our responsibilities that we have to pay. There is no circumnavigating this route. So we will also minus this interest liabilities. What are these interest liabilities? The amount of money which we have to pay to other countries from which we have borrowed some money. Understood? So this is our responsibility, duty to give this interest. So this is nothing called but primary deficit. Understand? Effective revenue deficit. Revenue deficit minus grants. Now why we are calculating this effective revenue deficit from 2011, I think. See, there are some of the grants, some of the money given to the states or panchayats. Understood? The government of India is giving some of the money to these states, UTs, gram panchayats. Now these money although comes in the revenue part of government of India, revenue expenditure, but ultimately on the ground level this money is used for the creation of asset. How? See, the government of India is providing money for मनरेगा स्कीम आपको पता है 2004-5 में आई थी. Now with those मनरेगा scheme amount there is creation of capital. How? The gram panchayat is creating infrastructure like roads, building toilets, schools. So these are creation of assets only. Now as the assets have been created, so government of India is contemplating on its decision to make these grants, to put these grants into revenue expenditure. So after contemplation, government of India thought that yes, we are doing some mistakes. These grants are used for the creation of capital assets, but we are putting these grants in the revenue expenditure. So that's why after 2011 another formula came in the minds of bureaucrats of India that we will also calculate effective revenue deficit. Now this effective revenue deficit formula is revenue deficit minus the grants. What type of grants? Which are used for creation of capital asset like roads, railways and other infrastructure. Understood? So these are all the types of deficit. In the next class we will be talking about the fiscal policy of India. But before ending the class, one more point, and this point is in relation to one of the question that has been came in this year's prelim, that is deficit financing. इतने सारे डेफिसिट पढ़ लिए और ये टॉपिक भूल गए. डेफिसिट फाइनेंसिंग, as the term suggests, we have to finance this deficit, also known as monetized deficit. Understood? Now this deficit has been created by the not so good prudence of government of India. Why? Because the expenditure part is greater than the revenue part. But at the end of the day, the government of India is running whole of India, administering whole of India. So this deficit should be financed somehow. Now there are various ways in which this deficit can be financed. What are these various ways? In chronology, firstly, we will be dependent on the external aids like that of IMF. These aids we don't have to give back. These are not loans, these are aids, helping aids. ठीक है? The second, we will be dependent on the external borrowings. The next we will prioritize as internal borrowings. And lastly, if all these options fail, then we will go to deficit financing by creation of, क्या है इस बार का क्वेश्चन, न्यू करेंसी. So this is our last step, deficit financing by creation of new currency or money by RBI, which is also called as helicopter money. In one of the newspaper, this term has been included, that there was something about that after COVID-19 pandemic we have to recover it, है ना? So that's why some of the economists are suggesting that please print this helicopter money and give it to the residents of India, so their demand will get increased. As their demand will get increased, so more and more products will be sold out in the market, so manufacturing units will boost up their production. और ये boost up हुई, इसका मतलब इसमें employment आएगी, employment आई, इसका मतलब residents के पास वापस रुपए आएंगे, residents के पास वापस रुपए आए, so they will demand more products. So this is the cycle of economy. मैंने आपको बहुत बार बता चुका है. If there is recession, we will, government of India will cut tax rates. This is true or not? Yes. as we are cutting down the tax rate, it means disposable income of the residents will increase, hence their demand will get increased. Understood? Creation of capital or public infrastructure at the time of recession is good or bad? Yes, it is good, and it will allay the fear of recession. Understood? So यही सब चीज़ें हैं, ये मैंने आपको प्रायोरिटी बता दी। ऐसे गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया देखेगी, ये ऑप्शन नहीं, ये नहीं हो रहा, सेकंड नहीं हो रहा, थर्ड नहीं हो रहा, कोई बात नहीं, ये तो हमारे हाथों में है, ये तो हम कभी भी कर ही सकते हैं। बट दिस क्रिएट्स द इन्फ्लेशनरी प्रेशर इन इंडिया। आपको पता ही है, इफ there is a creation of new money, it means the amount of Indian rupees in the market will get increased. Those who are excessive in the market, their demand or their value will get reduced. अगर उनकी वैल्यू रिड्यूस्ड हो गई, इसका मतलब देयर इज इन्फ्लेशन। अंडरस्टूड? सो आज के लिए इतना ही रखते हैं। इफ़ यू आर लैकिंग दिस कंसेप्चुअल वीडियोस, प्लीज़ ड्रॉप अ लाइक, शेयर इट विद योर फ्रेंड्स एंड सब्सक्राइब टू आवर यूट्यूब चैनल। तब तक के लिए गुड बाय, जय हिंद।